Welcome to my newest tutorial for banana chocolate chip muffins. Fluffy and tender, so buttery and rich from the addition of dark chocolate chips. A fantastic way to use up any overripe bananas as well as that sourdough discard you've got sitting around. If you want to learn how to make a sourdough starter from scratch, or if you want to learn more about my daily feed schedule, please see these tutorials I have up here on YouTube. I also have a basic how to make sourdough bread tutorial here as well, and you can of course visit me on Instagram at Foolproof Baking, where all my sourdough bakes and experiments are posted weekly. I usually bake breads daily, and so I'm feeding my starter 2 to 3 times per day, and I'm collecting the excess discarded sourdough in a bowl, and I store this in my freezer. I feed very small amounts of starter at a time, so I don't actually have a lot of discard, but this bowl is what I've collected over the last couple weeks. When you want to use some for a bake, just take the bowl from the freezer and thaw overnight in the refrigerator, or you can even put it on the counter, and it'll be ready to go first thing in the morning. I just want to add a quick note. Whatever you're using your discard in will take on some of the flavor of this sourdough culture, so just double check that it smells all right before you choose to use it. The first thing we want to do is preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. And let's begin with the dry ingredients. We've got here some all-purpose flour, and feel free to substitute some or all of this flour for whole wheat if you prefer. I've also got some baking soda, baking powder, sea salt, cinnamon, and fresh grated nutmeg. Pour these right on top of the flour and whisk together. We can set this aside now for a while we move on to the wet ingredients. I've got here 2 overripe bananas. The more overripe and black all over, the better the flavor will be in the end. Peel these bananas and break them up a little. Get them in the bowl and mash with a fork. And now for that sourdough discard, about a ½ cup's worth. I've thawed this overnight and let it come to room temperature along with the other ingredients for the last ½ hour or so. Just go ahead and scoop that right on top of the bananas. We also want to add into here a couple of eggs, as well as a teaspoon of vanilla extract. I find a fork works best to bring these wet ingredients together. Once it's all an even consistency, we can go ahead and place this bowl aside, and we'll start to work on creaming the butter and sugar. In a large bowl here, I've got some room temperature butter that I've cut into cubes, some brown sugar, as well as some granulated sugar. We can get the sugars in with the butter, and I find it easiest to use a hand mixer to whip these together. You'll want to whisk for a full 2 to 3 minutes, or until the mixture appears quite fluffy and more pale in color. Next, add right on top the banana sourdough egg mixture that you just prepared earlier. Scrape all that in there and use the hand mixer to incorporate, and the batter smells so good right now. Now is the time to add in that dry flour mix that we also prepared earlier, and I find it best to add the flour in 2 parts. Add about half the mix into the wet ingredients and use a spatula to fold the flour into the batter. Then, after about 30 seconds of mixing, go ahead and add in the rest of the flour. Again, fold in the flour until just mixed. It's important not to overstir the batter or the muffins may become dense. Finally, and maybe most importantly, add in those chocolate chips. I like to use dark chocolate chips, but go ahead and use whatever you most prefer. These are extra dark baking chips from Guittard, my favorite. I'm now going to spoon the batter into prepared paper-lined muffin tins. And I like to use a 4 tablespoon scoop to portion out the batter to each cup. And for these muffins, you can fill all the way to the top of the cups. We're actually going to end up with 5 tablespoons batter per muffin. So after adding the first 4 tablespoons, I'll go back around and add the extra tablespoon of batter in the end. And this is just the right amount for 12 muffins. Looking good here. These are now ready to go into the oven. Bake at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for about 16 to 20 minutes until you notice they're golden brown on the edges. A toothpick inserted into the middle muffin should come out clean. We'll remove these from the oven, let cool in the tin for a couple minutes, and then transfer to a cooling rack. I just can't help myself, so I've got to grab one of these while still warm. They're so tender, very moist and buttery. The flavor is incredible with the bananas and spices and all that dark chocolate. It's just heavenly. You can store these guys in an airtight container for up to a few days at room temperature, or they can stand in the refrigerator for up to a week. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope your family enjoys these as much as mine does. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe and check out my other tutorials. And if you want to further help support my channel, visit the link in the description below to access print-friendly supplemental PDFs and method guides to making your own sourdough starter, sourdough breads, and more sourdough discard recipes.